Hello, good day, and welcome to Smile Radio. I'm Richie J. You can catch me Monday to Thursday, 1 till 3, with the Richie J Show here at Smile Radio, bringing you a mix of music, taking your requests, with a little bit of chat, and everything else to go on top of that after lunch blues. So listen in live at www.smileradio.co, download the app via iTunes or Google Play, get in contact with us on Facebook at Smile.
So, welcome to Smile Radio. I'm Rich Harrison, and we've got
TC Talks.
So this is TC Talk, and we've also got another guest with us tonight.
And I'm Niall Simons.
Alfred Simons, my son. I thought I'd bring him around tonight just to join us and add a little bit of youth to the show, because let's be right about it, Richard, we're not young anymore, are we?
Speak for yourself. I'm still young at heart. So, what's your first song to kick us off then, Tom?
Well, we're going to be deep tonight, so I thought I'd start off with a bit more of a cheerier song. And being Irish, as I mentioned last week, I like to kick the show off with a good old Irish tune, and this is the Pogues and the Dubliners, the Irish Rover.
Let's have it.
On the 4th of July, 1806, we set sail from the sweet cove of Cork. We were sailing away with a cargo of bricks for the Grand City Hall in New York. 'Twas a wonderful craft, she was rigged fore and aft, and oh how the wild wind drove her. She stood several blasts, she had 27 masts, and they called her the Irish Rover.
We had 1 million bags of the best lager rags. We had 2 million barrels of stone. We had 3 million sides of our blind horses' hides. We had 4 million barrels of bones. We had 5 million hogs, 6 million dogs, 7 million barrels of porter. We had 8 million piles of old nanny ghost tales, and a whole of the Irish Rover.
There was old Mickey Coote, who played hard on his flute when the ladies lined up for a set. He would tootle with skill for each sparkling quadrille, till the dancers were flutered and bet. With his smart, witty talk, he was cock of the walk, and he rolled the dames under and over. They all knew at a glance when he took up his stance that he sailed in the Irish Rover.
From the banks of the Lee, there was Hogan from Kelsey to Hull. There was Johnny McGurk, who was scared stiff of work, and a man from Westmeath come along. There was Slugger O'Toole, who was drunk as a rule, and fighting Bill Tracy from Dover. And your man, Mike McCann, from the banks of the Bank, was the skipper on the Irish Rover.
For a sailor, it's always a bother in life. It's so lonesome by night and by day that he longs for the shore and a charming young whore who will melt all his troubles away. All the noise and the rout, swilling, pudging and stout, for him soon is done and over. Of the love of a maid, he is never afraid that I was sold from the Irish Rover. We had sailed 7 years when the measles broke out, and the ship lost its way in the fog. And that whale of a crew was reduced down to 2, just myself and the captain's old dog. Then the ship struck a rock, oh Lord, what a shock. The boat, it was turned right over. Turned 9 times around, and the poor old dog was drowned. And the last of the Irish Rover.
Good tune, that, Tom.
It's not bad, is it? I was just saying, everyone's smiling when you hear that sort of music. Which part of the reason I played the song is, obviously we're talking about quite a difficult subject tonight, depression, and not everybody smiles, which is quite appropriate for Smile Radio, because not everyone smiles, and I think it's good that we have that opportunity to speak about something that traditionally is not spoken about. Traditionally, it's brushed under the carpet, it's ignored, we're told that, it's just we don't want to talk about it, we don't want to discuss it. And I don't want to turn this into a stats show, because I think there's enough stats out there, but just a few quick stats. 1 in 10 people in the UK suffer from depression at some stage in their life. 50% of those people who have one depressive episode will have a relapse at some stage in their life. So often we're told that, you've had your downtime, you've had a bit of a depression, you've had your treatment, get on with it. Well, the stats are showing that 50% of those people will fall back into it at some stage, and over 3 million people are diagnosed with depression in the country. So those are just a few stats when we talk about depression, but I think we'll start tonight by saying, what is depression? How do we understand it? Obviously it's a kind of a sadness, it's a kind of a loneliness, it's an inability, it's a mood, it's an inability to function, to do the basic chores. For me, I think sometimes it gets confused with sadness, or when you have a breakup or a relationship breakdown, you feel a bit down in the dumps. I think there is a distinct difference. I don't know about you guys, but I think sometimes we confuse the two. That we have a difficult situation, so we have a breakup, and everyone feels down after a breakup or some financial problems. At what point do we think it tips over from being just a feeling down to actually being depressed? Where's the line? Have you any ideas on that now? Any opinions on that?
Well, I'm agreeing with what you said earlier about it being almost like overused. The term depression when medial things happen, say a breakup or something inconvenient in someone else's life. I do feel like terms that address mental illness used as adjectives for minor things are done quite a lot, which I think has also detrimented the view of mental health culture. At least when someone says, "Oh, I felt really anxious," or if I feel depressed, and they're talking about things that are just medial, quite small, things that you could just easily come over and come against. Then I agree with you on that side. That it is overused.
Yeah, and so it can minimise things as well, can't it? It can minimise the whole state of depression if it becomes an everyday language. I hear a lot of people saying, "I'm depressed today," and for somebody who suffers from depression, and we'll talk about that in a little bit of time, but I have struggled with depression and still struggle with depression. If you'd have seen me at 10 o'clock this morning, stuffing my face with biscuits and crisps and watching Fast and Loud on TV at 10 o'clock this morning, that's not a normal functioning person. That's somebody who's got some darkness going on in their life, and I've got a particularly difficult situation going on in my life at the moment. And for me, it can quite quickly slip into a real depression. But at the moment, I'm quite happy that it's just me being a bit down in the dumps. I call it hippo time, where you're wallowing in your own self-pity, and that's okay sometimes. I think it's important that we don't minimise this, that some people, you're allowed to have hippo time. You're allowed to just have that time of going, do you know what, I feel a little bit down in the dumps, and that's okay. It's when it slips over into the next bit that we really have to worry about it.
I think, change of seasons as well doesn't help. When you've gone from the summer and it's getting dark, and it's that time of year where you're getting out of bed, it's dark, you're going home from work, it's dark. It's, I think sunshine, it makes everybody, it's like listening to the Pogues. Yeah. It makes you smile, and
it is amazing people's attitudes to the weather as well. In the summertime when you see everyone going out, I always remark, we live on Leeds Road, on the main road, and I'll sit and I'm a people watcher. Some people would say a stalker, but I'm a people watcher, and I like to look out the window and go, I have names for all my neighbours. I'll not say what the names are, but I have names for all the neighbours, and I look out the window, and I have to remark it in the winter time. Where do these people go? You don't see anyone from around about October time. They just disappear. They just literally we all go back into our little dens, and we hibernate for the winter time, and that's bound to bring on some sort of darkness, and it is darkness if you want to use the seasons thing, because it is dark in the morning, it's dark in the night time. We're coming to work in dark, we're coming home in dark, like you've said. So I think it's important that people understand that. Is it the disconnect, you think, in the winter time? Is it because we disconnect ourselves from other people?
I think that's part of it. Yeah, I think that. Oh, because obviously in winter, everyone typically with animals, it's like hibernation, isn't it? It's going back to wherever you live or wherever you work, and then sort of like just preserving all of your energy for things that you need to do. I think in summer, people let it out. People express themselves a lot more. You see a lot more colours, a lot more vibrances with summer, and then when it comes to winter, it's just like a huge juxtaposition. Everyone is inside, everyone's working, everyone's trying to stay out of the cold, really. That's the thing, and I think that's what almost keeps people apart from each other, is that little personal time that people have to sort of restructure what they're doing after having a lovely summer coming into the bleakness of winter sometimes.
I wonder if Christmas has any influence on the darkness as well, because there's a lot of financial pressure on people coming to Christmas. I'd love to see, and I don't want to upset Christians around the world, but if we could move Christmas maybe to the summertime, see if it affects people in a different way, because the financial pressures on people as we go into the winter period, to have the right things for their children, to make sure we've got enough money, especially after the summer period where you've all gone off on holiday and things are a little bit tight. I wonder if that has an effect on people financially, because I think finances have to be discussed when it comes to going into a depression, because financial responsibilities these days are quite tough. Things aren't getting any easier. People are struggling for money more and more, and I think that might have another effect. So I think for me, depression, you're right, we need to stop minimising it, stop using the words when it's too easy to use, depression. Let's use something different, Otherwise, we're going to get into a situation like, bad back syndrome. We all know, we've all worked with people with a bad back syndrome, and I've got a bad back, and then when you genuinely have a bad back, nobody believes you. Literally nobody believes you, and it's almost getting to that stage with depression. No, he's just using that depression card, and I've had that said to me in the past. Oh, you're just using that card again. What do you want? A few weeks off work? And I've had that said to me in the past. I'm not going to say who said it, but a long time ago, people said that to me. You just want a few more weeks off work. So I think it's important to understand that depression, for me, and I think for you guys, is a lot more than just feeling down in the dumps.
Do you think that people who suffer with depression are more susceptible to addiction?
I think we go through, because of the lack, and again we'll talk about treatment methods and support that's out there, because of the lack of treatment methods and support and the lack of understanding. I think a lot of us self-medicate with different things. So it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, could be sex, it could be all sorts of things, gambling. And I think we probably would self-medicate. I think self-harm comes from depression as well. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
Yeah, self-harm would come from depression. So again, it's an addiction to the harming of your body and getting away from that pain. So I think that's something that definitely is linked. So understand. I always said this when I sobered up. I went back to the doctor 3 years after I sobered up. I said to the doctor, "You've always told me I suffer from depression because I was drunk. Well, I'm now sober for 3 years, and I'm still got depression. Can we now uncover why I get like this?" And he went, "Yeah, you're ready for it now." And we got some counselling. It was a long time coming, but we managed to get it. So that was a clarity moment for me, is that yes, I was self-medicating, and I think there's probably a lot of people out there who self-medicate and don't actually know they're depressed, just think their life is pretty rubbish. So it's one of those things that, I wonder how many, we say there's 3 million people diagnosed with depression. I wonder how many people out there are suffering from depression that we don't know about. That are just going to the pub on a night time, getting absolutely off their heads drunk, and going home and ignoring it, and getting up and just thinking we've just got a bad life.
Well, yeah, I reckon that isn't anything to do with ignorance. I reckon that's more to do with a traditional view of mental health that is still around these days. People that say that, that disregard mental health issues as just something that is, like that we said earlier, something that is minimal, something that is just a feeling that will pass, something that is temporary, when really, when you think, like you say, 3 million people diagnosed, I bet there's people out there that have been told the whole life that the feeling that they've got is just a temporary thing that will pass. And I think they push it aside for a section of time, and then when it comes back around, they think, oh, it'll pass again, until they maybe later on in their life they start to realise this has been a feeling that's been hitting me for my whole life.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot to do with traditional cultures that introduce mental health topics into their lives and stuff like that. I think it's discussions that aren't had. I think it's discussions that need to be had.
Good point.
But yeah, like you say, it'd be interesting to see who, if you did like a general study of people diagnosed and undiagnosed, where the line would be. Where would it stop and where would it end?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's people are traditionally told, snap out of it, get on with it. What have you got to be depressed about? All these sound bites that people throw at us all the time. What have you got to be depressed about? I think of your kids, go out and do some work, and why don't you just go out running? You know what I mean? I've had that said to me. I don't know, it's nobody that runs more than me, that used to run more than me, don't run anymore. But and say, well, why don't you just go out running? Because sometimes that just doesn't work. So it's one of those things that we do need to come away from, and I think that's a better understanding. We need a better, and I think it is getting better. I think we are the fact that we're having a discussion now on a radio station, talking about depression. 3 guys in a room, talking about depression. If you'd have said that 5 years ago, I think people would have gone, nah, do you know what? You need to just bag that. That's for, and I'm going to be traditional here, that's for women. That's a discussion that women have.
No,
3 men in a room wouldn't discuss depression.
Definitely.
So I think attitudes are changing now. You're a student now studying at Huddersfield University at the minute. Is it changing at your level at university? Do the lads talk about how they're feeling?
I think in today's sort of like internet culture and things that are going on with my student life, and as I see it, I'm saying this, it's more of how I see it. If there's someone out there listening to this that disagrees with me, then that's completely fair. I just see it in this way. But when I see the internet culture now at the moment with students of my age or older, or generally around our age, there is a lot more emotional conversation involved, and I think that is to do with, in a controversial way, to do with celebrity culture, because you see a lot of celebrities who end up speaking about their troubles now. You have people a lot more open. People who got into scandals, or celebrities that got into scandals maybe 10 years ago, they would have been scrutinised, riddled with all sorts of controversies 10 years ago that they'd never be able to express. Nowadays, we're having people like, say, Shia LaBeouf, and people with expressed difficulties, who are actually coming out and saying, I struggle with this, and putting out into the open. And then people can take from that and say, right, that's a lot more empathy.
Well, that's great to hear that celebrity culture is having a positive impact on how we see mental health. And as an oldie, I never really saw it like that, and that's good to hear now that the younger people that's where they're getting their information from. So if they're seeing their celebrities who they idolise, and they're coming out and being more open about how they're feeling on a day-to-day basis. And let's be right about it. Hopefully it doesn't have to be to the point where you're having a complete mental breakdown before you start speaking about it. And I hope, and I think more and more celebrities are doing this. They're coming before they have the breakdown. You know what I mean? They're starting to talk about how they're feeling before they have the breakdown. So it's not that rock bottom feeling. So hopefully that will help your generation to come forward sooner, to ask for some help, to ask for a little bit more information, and find out what is depression, how does it feel, what is anxiety, all those sorts of things, and have a better understanding of where they sit.
Before you answer that, Niall,
Okay,
I think what we'll do is we'll just break for a song.
Sounds good.
Hold that thought.
All right, yeah, no problem.
And what's your next song then?
This is we're going to keep the mood fairly somber. This is a song that I listened to back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. In Spiral Carpets, this feels a lot of poignancy for me in this song, and I hope you enjoy it.
Husband don't know what he's done. Kids don't know what's wrong with mum. She can't say, they can't see. Putting it down to another bad day. Daddy don't know what he's done. Kids don't know what's wrong with mum. So this is how it feels to be lonely. This is how it feels to be small. This is how it feels when your word means nothing at all. Black car drives through the town. Some guy from the top estate left a note for a local girl, and yet he had it all on a plate. So this is how it feels to be lonely. This is how it feels to be small. This is how it feels when your word means nothing at all. Husband don't know what he's done. Kids don't know what's wrong with mum. She can't say, they can't see. Putting it down to another bad day. So this is how it feels to be lonely. This is how it feels to be small. This is how it feels when your word means nothing at all. So this is how it feels to be lonely. This is how it feels to be small. This is how it feels when your word means nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
That is a tune. That takes me back. That takes me back.
It's fantastic, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
it's that took me back to a time in my life, and I think this part of the show. Sorry, guys, but I'm going to start talking about some darkness that's been in my life. My father passed away in 1988, and that song was really something that I played and played and played and played from the time it came out for a few years, because that's how I felt. I felt lonely. I felt lonely for a long, long time. Prior to that, I'd had periods in my life where I had darkness. Fairly turbulent childhood back in Ireland, and it was. I suppose every child goes through how they experience their own childhood, how they experience people rowing, how they experience anger and frustration and violence. And for me, I really struggled with the whole. Certainly, growing up in Belfast, there's violence everywhere. There's violence in the home as well at times, but it was when my father passed away, the loneliness really kicked in, because I was a strange kid in a strange country, now with a dead father, and that darkness really took me to, it took me to what we talked about earlier on, self-medicating. And that self-medicating went from 13 to 33, and through those periods in my life, I didn't understand how depressed I was getting, because I was so drunk for so long. And it's difficult talking about this, because obviously I've got my son here, Niall, and Niall experienced his dad drunk for a few years, and that self-medicating was hiding a pain that was going on inside. And as I mentioned before, after 3 years of being sober, I finally went and said, look, I'm still getting depressive episodes, I'm still feeling down, I'm having really high highs and really low lows, and they now call it bipolar. I preferred the old term, manic depression, And for me, I honestly did prefer that, because it explains it a little bit better. Because you do have mania, but then you have massive amounts of depression. Now the mania side of it, fantastic. You do crazy things. You
Take on the world.
You take on the world. You run across America. You run through the Sahara Desert. You run 10 marathons in 10 days. You run ultra marathons. You start to build a gym in the bottom of your garden. You run a personal training company. You do all those things that you become an inspirational speaker overnight. You just go, I'm going to become an inspirational speaker, and you go off and set that stall out, and you chase that dream. So the mania is fantastic, and a lot of people see that, and they go, well, he can't be depressed because look at how good he is at doing those things. And sorry if this is self-indulgent, guys, but this is important to get across. And we see people who are successful, and they're running out and they're doing all these, and this is where celebrities struggle sometimes, because we go, well, how can they then all of a sudden crash? They've got the money, they've got the structure, they've got everything, all the people around them. How all of a sudden do they crash? Well, I can explain how quickly it can come on. In 2016, I went through a period where I crashed like I've never crashed before. I'd been on holiday. I'd finished a contract in the construction industry, went on holiday with my family, had a really difficult time on holiday. Had periods during that holiday where I stood on a cliff edge, wanted to throw myself off the cliff. But obviously I was on holiday with a family, you can't do that. But just constantly thought process was, how can I get out of this? I hate this. I don't want to feel like this anymore. Went home, and on the way home we dropped our kids off at their grandparents, came back to our house. Zoe went back to work on Monday morning, and I was left with silence. And for anyone who's experienced depression, silence is a nightmare. Silence is the noisiest thing you'll ever hear, if that makes sense. I sat there in silence and thought, this has to finish. I need to end this. I can't go on with this any longer. The whole point of my existence had been questioned. I'd had all these highs, and all of a sudden I was on my own. I had no job. I had nowhere to go. My kids weren't in the house. Zoe had gone to work, earning a living, paying our bills, and I was useless. I was a waste of time, a waste of space. There was no point in me being here any longer. And that's when depression really gets to you, when you feel utterly useless. I don't know if anyone who's listening has had that feeling as well, where they just feel, do you know what, I can't get out of bed. It's not that you can't get out of bed, it's you don't want to get out of bed, because there's no point. Life becomes pointless. And I think that's really depression in a nutshell. Life becomes pointless. And if life becomes pointless, it's hard to get up, it's hard to get dressed, it's hard to shower, it's hard to do these things. And I eventually got myself, I've actually got a little movie that a friend of mine, David Taylor, recorded. So if you're on Vimeo, a bit of self-promotion here, there's a video called The Bridge. And I talk about the time I went to a bridge just up the road from our house and contemplated suicide. And the only reason it stopped me that night was, as I stood on the bridge, it wasn't high enough. I thought, there's a chance I'll survive this. So I didn't jump. A few days later, I drove up to Scamondon Dam. And there's a bridge that goes over Scamondon Dam. We all know the bridge. Thankfully for me, I couldn't find the bridge. So I thought, I know what I'll do. There's a reservoir over here. I'm going to throw myself in the reservoir. Drown myself. And I sat there, and I've still got a photograph at home now of me realising what I'd done. What I'd forgotten about in that darkness, I'd forgotten that I'd actually learned how to swim that year. 2016, I'd learned how to swim. And as I sat at the side of this reservoir, I thought, well, you idiot, you can't even drown yourself, because you can swim. And I looked along this res and thought, I could swim that. So and your reaction, I don't care what anyone says, trying to drown yourself is pretty tough, because your
animal instinct is
to survive. Yeah. So I sat and had a cup of tea, and I still got a photograph of the flask where I sat and photographed my thermos and went, it's better than killing yourself, Tom. Have a pot of tea. Just relax, you know what I mean? So that darkness, to me, that's depression. when you literally feel pointless. You don't have any desire to move on. You don't have any desire to get out of bed or shave or wash or do anything like that. You don't want to look at your kids. You don't want to talk to your wife. You don't want to open your post. You don't want to look at your bank account. You literally don't want to do anything.
If you don't mind me asking, listening to your dad speaking like that, this is probably a silly question, but how does that make you feel? Knowing that, you know, your dad Tom is a larger than life character. I mean, in his day playing football, he were, you know, fearless, and
Yeah, definitely.
and how does that make you feel?
I think, well, it's made me feel. I mean, over the years, it's been difficult to accept a lot of things about, you know, my dad's situation. It's been obviously being a younger person when he was in the midst of a lot of his troubles. It was harder for me to come to terms with it and to also reconcile a lot of things that were going on. But as I've sort of the last couple of years, I'm not gonna say gone through some things, because obviously anyone out there that's listening with any sort of mental health condition, it sounds awful for me to say that I'm going through something when in reality my situation was nowhere near as difficult, but I still expressed that I was going through some troubles. And I came to realise that my dad being so open and being so articulate about his feelings, and about, especially to do with men, and especially to do with male expression, you know, and getting emotions out that stereotypically you see with sort of a female demographic of people that end up expressing their emotions and almost stereotyping them about it, whereas men have been stereotyped as these hardened characters that, especially in Yorkshire as well, I always find that traditional characters that don't express how they feel and just sort of get on with the job, you know, get on with life. It's how you're raised.
But the thing is, how do you define one problem's worse than another? Because it's all relative. It's all relative to that individual. You know, what might be trivial to me may not be to you, because we're all different, and we all cope with things different.
Yeah, we all have different sensitivity levels based on our experience. So Niall's childhood was different to my childhood. So what he experiences and how he relates to certain things and certain experiences in his life will be different to how I experience them. The way I've been brought up is probably different to the way Niall's brought up. So those things, I think the sensitivity of how you're brought up has a massive impact. You know, some people will go into a massive depression because somebody called them a name, and to the outside world, people will go, well, just get a grip, he's only called your name, sticks and stones and all that. But if you're of a sensitive nature, if something in your childhood relates back to that, then it's really difficult for you to convey to other people that how hurtful that can be. So sensitivity levels are important.
I've just got a message here from Chantel. Hi Chantal, we're on Facebook Live for all those who are listening on the radio, so if you want to tune in. And again, if you've got any questions, let us know. Contact us on Smile Radio Yorkshire, drop us a message, or on Twitter, Smile Radio 3. Chantal says, depression is such a hard thing, can grasp at any time, but there's always hope and love around you. Have faith and be kind to yourself. Beautiful words.
It is. I mean, that's phenomenal to hear, you know.
And we touch, I mean, we do talk, I mean, me and Tom have talked in quite a bit of depth over the last couple of weeks, and it's learning to love yourself. It sounds a bit, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for, a bit mushy and all the rest of it, but if you don't love yourself, do you know what I mean? Who else is going to love
100%, you? 100%, and I think that's when Niall's talking there, and I have so much love for this lad, not just because he's my son, I call him my brother, because for me, I hope that over the last couple of years we've tried to show how to give yourself some love, how to give yourself that understanding, give yourself a break sometimes. Chantal mentions faith there, and I always end everything, even my emails now, with keep the faith. And I've stolen that from Northern Soul, obviously, but keep the faith for me is about keeping the faith in yourself. And when you're in a depression, you don't see it. You literally don't see it. And it's hard to keep the faith. It's hard to have faith in yourself. And so me being able to express myself sometimes and talk about things freely and openly allows people like Niall or people like my partner Zoe to be able to not intervene but to offer support. Because it's often in depression, it takes a lot for the person to say something. And if it's dismissed or if it's not taken in the way it's meant, that can be really detrimental. So if I've said something and Niall's just gone, I'm too busy, Dad, talk to me tomorrow, that can have a massive impact. In the same way, if Niall says something to me and I say, Niall, can you ring me tomorrow? I'm busy. You know what I mean? If he comes with something that's really deep, you've got to almost be in a position when somebody's in a depression to accept whatever they tell you when they tell you. Not to take part. I think that's an important thing as well. Not to take part in the depression, but to accept the words. You know, so if I'm saying this is how I'm feeling, too many people are wanting to give you an answer rather than to listen. I think that's important. So when Chantal talks about have faith in yourself, yeah, you do, but you also need some faith in other people around you that will go, do you know what, I'm going to listen. So me and Niall meet up once a week and I go for a coffee. And this kid, you know, I talk his ears off. He just listens. But also, I hope I do the same. Do I listen to you as well?
Yeah, you do. Yeah,
That's right.
Do you ever say to him, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, Dad? You know?
Also, Irish don't.
Just while Chantal said something else, I really appreciate your input, Chantal. Everyone's difficult. Put my teeth in. Everyone's difficulties are personal, and what's hard for one is easy for another, and we've just kind of touched on that.
Yeah.
And it's a really tough one because you know last week we touched on a very good friend of mine. Unfortunately, Ian, he committed suicide. A really good friend of mine, and I said we didn't see the signs, but you know there would have been signs.
Yeah.
And you know, and sometimes you can. We're all guilty of being dismissive. I do it, you know, to my daughter, my family, you know, my wife, the kids, you know. We're all guilty of what we think, you know, but is it important? But sometimes you don't know, because it takes some people. I'm very open. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and if I'm peed off, I'm peed off, and you know about it.
Yeah.
But not everybody's like me. You know, people take a lot of persuading, and I mean, I don't know. How are you in your with your dad being? Has it helped you be more open?
Definitely. It's been a building process, really, of finding, like we've discussed, really about finding self-appreciation that has now allowed me to. Well, often than not, it became whenever I had a difficulty, I would keep it within and almost not talk to people about it as a means of not bothering them, because I felt like in speaking about it, it was almost relaying the energy of that problem onto them. But with my dad being a lot more open about his past transgressions and things like that, and a lot about the darkness that he's faced and things like that, it's made me realise that if you don't put it out there, if you keep it inside, and if you don't put it into the world, at least in some form of, you know, conversation or topic, you're never going to find any sort of closure about anything that you're going through.
How can you fix it if you don't know anything? How
Exactly.
can you not say fix? It's probably the wrong choice, but how can you deal with it? How can you help cope with it if you don't know?
There's a famous saying that says the only way to solve a problem is to first recognise there is one. And if you don't see the signs, and if you don't see the inevitable strains on a problem, you're never going to solve it, because you're not going to see that it's there. And obviously, like you were saying earlier, that signs are a difficult thing to read. But when you definitely do see them, or you definitely find that conversation, and you find the time to have that conversation, or at least maybe put yourself out there to have that conversation, it's so worthwhile. It's everything. It can mean everything to somebody.
It's life and death, and for some people, you know, have that one conversation.
Literally. We've got a message from Dan Jowett. Hi Dan, thanks for tuning in.
Good lad,
He's
Dan.
put, great show guys. Thank you very much. Someone else's suffering doesn't alleviate or invalidate your feelings. Depression is not to be compared.
Yeah, and that's a great point.
Yeah.
Because often when you start to talk, other people, I don't know whether Dan's getting at this point, but other people sometimes go, well, I feel like that, or I've had this problem. You know what I mean? So it's one-upmanship, and everyone's different. You know, I try and use the analogy of a boxer. You know, you put different boxers in a ring. Some will take a punch to the jaw. Some will take a punch to the jaw, but will wince when they get hit to the solar plexus. Some will stand strong when they get hit in the solar plexus, but wince when they get hit in the jaw. We all have soft spots. We all have toughness, but we all have it in different locations. So boxing is a decent analogy, because if you can get that in your head, that everywhere a boxer's hit, he has strong points and weak points. If you find the weakness, you'll take a man down. And unfortunately, we don't. We try to think that everyone's the same, that all the problems are the same, and we try and just go, well, that's the treatment for everyone. We'll come on to a little bit of treatment afterwards. I think. Are we ready for another?
Yeah, just
song?
before we go to a song, Chantal, really appreciate your input tonight. Thank you so much. The subject is so close to I'm reading it, my heart. I've lived with depression. The key is to talk, for sure. And having someone to listen, hearing your thoughts aloud is a massive help. Advice doesn't really work. Hugs are the best. P.S. Great show, Rich. Love you.
There you go.
Love you too.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to hear that. That's advice. We'll come on to advice afterwards, because it's really important who you get your advice from, because there's an awful lot of amateur psychologists out there.
Yeah.
That's a good conversation to have too afterwards.
They will, yeah.
So this next track, we're going to go with the Scientist.
The Scientist, yeah. This is again another 90s track, but it's fairly relevant to if you're feeling the darkness.
Come up to meet you.
So, we're live back on Smile Radio. I'm Rich Harrison, and we're on the TC Talk Show. Tom Fitzsimons and
Niall Fitzsimons here as a guest. I don't know, a guest. Yeah.
so we've got some messages coming through. That it's really brilliant that everybody's putting their thoughts and the feelings out there. And Richie sent a message saying, "Great show tonight. Thank you very much, Richie. An issue close to home. I had depression since my teens. I tried to manage it by keeping a routine. It was only the last few years since being with my partner I can feel like I can talk about it more. The worst part is the feeling of isolation, but knowing you're not alone and people want to help, but you're too stubborn to admit it." I think we can all relate to that. The feeling it happens, it's like a fog. You can't find your way out of it, and simple things can set it off. And it's fantastic to see you guys discussing this matter.
Fantastic.
No, thank you, Richie, for your thoughts.
Yeah,
and
thanks,
that's
Yeah, it's great to hear, and it segues us nicely into talking about what works and what doesn't, what helps and what doesn't. And certainly, I can only speak from my own experience of what works and what doesn't. I know. Let's get out of the way. What doesn't work? What doesn't work is somebody ringing you and saying, "Snap out of it, pull your boots up. What have you got to be depressed about?" All that nonsense.
God,
There's
a great thing on the internet where it says, what is it? When if somebody say we admit that you're depressed, or when you admit that you're in a rut, and somebody says to you, "Oh, just don't be." Just don't be depressed.
Yeah,
and
just
you're
don't
like,
be depressed.
Wow,
Just
no
smile
way.
more.
I didn't think about that. No way.
Yeah, just smile more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just people stating the obvious.
That sort of thing is quite commonplace. And I think it's
Definitely.
because people are stumped sometimes when you come to them with a problem and you come to them with an issue, and they literally just go, "Do you know what? It's like dominoes. Knock if you can't go. I can't do this. I can't cope with somebody coming to me with depression." And that's okay, but my advice to anyone like that, if you're struggling with what to say, then say nothing. Listen to what the person has to say. You don't have to partake in anything that you're not comfortable with. Definitely. If you literally just listen to that person, and the best bit of advice I was ever given was well, he's a friend now, but he started off as a coach for me, Lee Stagles. And if Lee's listening, he's up in Edinburgh at the minute, but he might be listening, you never know. And if Lee's listening, he gave me a great bit of advice, and he says this to all the guys he coaches: "What do you need from me?" And that's a really powerful statement, because what you're saying to that person is, because sometimes when somebody's in a depressed state and they start talking, and out of a lack of knowledge or a lack of understanding, you try and offer bits of advice that you've heard on the internet or read on the internet, or you've heard in a pub, and you try and give all this information. But it's better that you ask a more direct question: "What do you need from me?" And often the person will say, "I don't need anything from you. I just need you to listen."
Yeah.
And that's a great bit of little coaching tip for anyone who's got a partner or a friend who's really struggling with this thing called depression. What do you need from me? So that's in a friendship group. I think that would be a great bit of advice to give people, or I hope it's a good bit of advice. What do you need from me? In a more practical sense, what worked for me? Exercise, 100%. Now people are going to go, "Well, I don't want to do exercise because I'm depressed," and I get that. And if you'd have seen me this morning sitting eating crisps and biscuits, I don't look like an athlete. But sometimes you've just got to force yourself at times to go and do this simple task, like going for a walk, getting outside, feeling like you've done something productive. So last week when I was feeling down, I made myself go to the gym and just lifted one weight, just piled the bar up and lifted it for an hour. That's all I did. Didn't do anything technical. Well, it was a little bit technical, but not majorly technical. And I just lifted that bar for an hour. And I walked out of the gym feeling 1,000 times better than I did before I went in. So for me, exercise is definitely a good thing to get involved with. It doesn't have to be running. It doesn't have to be weightlifting. You could go out walking. It could be playing badminton. Anything you want to do, whatever floats your boat. If you fancy going out and getting a bit of exercise, getting some fresh air, getting your heart pumping, getting the blood pumping around your body, feeling alive. Because let's be right about it. Let's not talk about endorphins and all that sort of stuff. It's when your heart pumps blood around your body at a higher rate than you normally operate at, you feel alive. And that's the point of depression. You don't feel alive. You don't want to be alive. So when the heart starts pumping that blood around your body, all of a sudden you start to go, do you know what, I quite like this feeling. This is all right. This starts to make me feel better. So that's, again, for me, it was exercise. Now, we talked earlier about music. Does music work for you, or does it work against you? In a depressed state?
Well, I was going to say, I reckon that if the music that you listen to has some sort of positive energy for you, then I guess then that's all you can ask for, really. I mean, I suppose that's the whole point of music, in a sense.
I remember listening to Tony Robbins, who talked about he was driving around his car and he felt really depressed, and he couldn't understand why he was feeling depressed. And he'd been at a premiere of the Titanic movie, and somebody had given him the CD for the Titanic movie. And he was driving around his car playing this CD, and he realised that was what had triggered him into a really dark mood and a really sadness. So I think it's the type of music that you listen to.
Definitely.
You know, so if you've listened to those two tracks earlier on, the Inspiral Carpets and the Scientist, if you listen to them on a loop all the time, you're gonna feel a little bit down after a while.
We've got another message on Facebook here. Becky says, manage my depression well for yours, but find myself struggling on a daily basis. Can't be the strong one all the time. Feel like I don't get support. I don't know really how to answer, or I don't know if it's more of a statement rather than a question. But we are going to try and if you want to inbox us, there's various things that we might be able to help and point you in the right direction.
We can signpost.
We can signpost you to. So if you want to inbox, Becky, we can.
But here's the thing as well, Becky, it's okay to feel like some days you can't cope. It's actually okay to feel like that. And I think sometimes we're too quick to rush people out of depression. Again, I'll go back to Lee Stagels. When I was out in 2016, when I was down, he turned around to me and said, "Stay down." And that's a powerful coaching tool that Lee used on me that day. He turned around to me and says, "Stay down, Tom." And again, we're not programmed that way. In our society, we're there to pick people up and move people on. And sometimes it's nice just to go. So for Becky, sometimes you can have it. You're allowed to have as long as you're not coming to any harm, as long as you're not getting into a place where you're feeling unsafe. As long as you're still safe, it's okay to pull the covers over one day, just do what I did today, eat some biscuits, have some crisps, and just do that. I call it hippo time. You're allowed to have those days, especially when you've had a period of ups and downs. The trick is to try and set yourself, not anyone else, set yourself a time limit on it. So today, I set myself a time limit that I would be dressed and showered by 5 o'clock. Now that's to everyone else listening going, what, you didn't get dressed and showered till 5 o'clock this afternoon? No, I didn't. Sorry, guys. That's the way my life rolls at the minute. But yeah, so exercise, music. What else would you recommend now? What about writing? You're a creative writer. Does that help when you're feeling down?
Well, this is another point entirely, really. I do believe that with creativity, things like mental health conditions and mental health issues can detriment creativity in a sense. But on the opposite end of that, you can also influence what you're going through and how you're feeling with creative outputs. So there's artists that I know and there's writers that I know that come across these mental health conditions that they suffer with and find it really cathartic almost to write or to paint or to create.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful thing, really.
But if you look at Adele and Sam Smith, if they hadn't had the heartbreak and the downs, they wouldn't have had them fantastic hits that they had. That's a positive spin of a traumatic time for them individuals, And it's
a great thing to do. I shared a couple of blogs on my Facebook post this morning just to try and prompt people what we're going to talk about today, and being able to write those blogs back in 2016, it allowed me to take what was inside and throw it out there and say, well, it doesn't belong to me anymore. That's a really powerful tool. So for me, writing, speaking, painting if you can, taking whatever's in here, putting it down on paper, recording it into your recording device, just doing an audio on your phone and just getting rid of it. And sometimes that's just what you just want to get rid of it off your chest. One of the blogs I wrote this morning was get it off your chest. And that's what that to me is a very powerful tool. If you can do that, it's a phenomenal thing to do.
Yeah, well, we're coming up to the last sort of 5 minutes of our show.
I can't believe how quickly this goes.
The hour. We might have to do a longer than an hour segment, but anyway. But I want to just say thank you, everybody, for sending your messages in. And if there's further information you want, get in touch. You can either inbox me on Facebook, or if you can't, email me at richard@smileradio.co. Contact Tom.
Yeah, there's also just there are some groups that we'll probably, I'll just read out now if you don't mind, Richard.
No.
We've got mind.org.uk. We've got, I'll just have to put my glasses on, I'm getting old, Richard.
Get your readers on.
To apologise. timetochange.org.uk. youngminds.org.uk. That's recommended to all teenagers, and that's something that the high schools pump out all the time. Rethink.org, mentalhealth.org, I think I've read out, and always NHS. We've got to signpost people to the doctors first and foremost. Go and see a doctor, go and speak about it. We haven't had time to talk about medication. The old argument of, do you take pills or do you don't? Nice and briefly, if it works for you, use the tablets, take the tablets. I use medication for a period of 18 months. It's the best thing I ever did for a period of 18 months. But here's the thing with medication. Take the medication and do the work. Too many people take the medication and don't do the work on themselves. And I hope that makes sense when I say do the work. Don't be taking the meds and just go sitting back and going, do you know what? I'm fixed now, because it's not. You've got to do the work.
So I'm going to do my sign off, and then we'll leave it with TC.
All right. Thanks to Niall as well for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been great to be here.
Yeah,
brother.
It's been part of the conversation.
So I'll sign it over to you, Tom.
All right. As always, guys, keep the faith in yourself. Keep the faith in everything you're doing. And with depression, remember that, don't make a bad day a bad life. And I'll speak to you soon.
So just to sign off, what song are you going to finish off with?
I'm going to finish off with Hadaway, I believe, and Life. This was played during a Tony Robbins conference I went to a couple of years ago, and it's quite a powerful track if you listen to it in the right frame of mind.
Thanks again, Tom.
Thanks, guys.
Life